Today is Monday, May the 13th, 2013. My name is Clint Reisner. I am the videographer, and the interview's name is Rosalee Cohen. And the place of the interview today is at the Jewish Community Center. We are the Dallas Jewish Historical Society. What would you like for me to call you, Mrs. Cohen or Rosalee?
Just call me Rosalee.
Okay, very well. Okay, Rosalee, in beginning, I'm going to ask you some questions regarding your family.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about your family, parents, grandparents. Where and when were you born? How did you happen to settle in Dallas? What did your parents do for a living?
My daddy came from Poland. My mother came from Russia, the Ukraine. And Daddy landed in Galveston. Mama landed in Philadelphia. I don't know how they met, but they did. They were married in 1919. And I was born in 1920. My daddy bought a house on Corinth Street and furnished it completely for kosher so he could bring his mother, his brother, and his sister over.
From Poland?
Yes.
From Poland. Where did they live in Poland?
The same town that Zetley lived in, and we pronounced it Sheps, but it's spelled with all the Z's and the stuff, and someone said to me once, there is no such place. I said, well, my daddy wasn't there. Mr. Zetley told me he knew my grandparents there, that they owned a butcher shop, which I never knew.
I see.
My father's name was Ralph David Perchak, Raphael David Perchak. But when he got to Germany, he was befriended by a rabbi named Jacob Cohen. When he got to Galveston and they asked him what his name was, he said Jacob Cohen. So I said, Daddy, you afraid that the Polish army was going to reach across the Atlantic and grab you? And he said, I guess so. But he had an aunt in London who never called him anything but Meine Liebe Raphael David. But we called him Jake. I had one sister who was 23 months younger than I. She was born in 1404 Corinth. My mother didn't like hospitals. She thought you went there to die. So she had me there, but I guess that was enough. And I was born Erev Yom Kippur, so my daddy didn't go to see me, and my uncle said to my father, you have a new baby, and he walked from the old, well, I don't know where Shearith Israel was at that time. I think someplace on St. Louis Street, and he walked all the way to St. Paul Hospital to see me. And he used to tease me because I was an instrument baby, and I had two big indentations in my skull, and he said, I walked all that distance for that? And for years, it used to make me feel so bad until I realized he was teasing me. My sister was born 23 months after I was born, and she was a chunky little girl. They didn't have to worry about her dents. She just had dimples. And her name was Bernice, but we called her Baby Doll. And then we shortened it to Babe, and then my kids called her Aunt Bibi. She passed away about 20 years ago.
What did your parents do for a living?
My daddy had, excuse me, my daddy was in the manufacturing business. He was in the wholesale merchants building for over 20 years. And he started out making blouses. And of course the name on the blouse was Rosalee. It was named after me. It was Cohen Garment Company. And my mother worked with him. She was a designer. I don't know where they got this talent, but they had it. And that's where he was. He worked originally when he came to Dallas for Neiman's, and he got $3 a week, and they were supposed to get a $1 raise every week until he got to $12, and they stopped paying him. He said he learned 2 words, liar and thief, and he chased Mr. Neiman through the store with a pair of scissors, and then he worked for Sanger's, because they hired a lot of the refugees or the immigrants or whatever.
Your childhood, where did you live as a child?
When I was 4 years old, my daddy was approached by the owners of the Kamal Mill in New Braunfels, and they wanted him to come open a factory to make cotton dresses. So when I was 4, my sister was 2, we moved to New Braunfels, and we stayed there for 7 years. We came back to Dallas when I was 11 years old, and I started Colonial Hill School. We lived across the street from the school. Daddy rented an apartment, and then the next year he bought a house on Park Row. So I went to Colonial, I went to Forest, and then I went to the University of Texas, and I went to the University of Oklahoma, and I graduated from SMU. And my husband used to tease me, want to know why I didn't go to A&M. I said they didn't take co-eds in my day. I went for dances, but not to go to school there.
What was your neighborhood like, mostly at Colonial Hill Elementary?
It was a good neighborhood. It was interesting because the Schlingers lived next door to my aunt, who lived one door down from us. The Stearns lived across the street. The Abramsons lived around the corner. The Rothschilds lived around the corner. Landsberg, she married a Rothschild. So we knew each other. We were in and out of each other's doors constantly. We could play outdoors. We weren't worried. Merwin Hoffman lived behind me, and we used to climb up on the roofs like idiots and jump off until my mother caught us, and then we stopped. But the neighborhoods were fine.
So it was a very nice neighborhood, wasn't it?
Very, very cordial.
Free of crime, violence.
Well, we had break-ins, but we didn't. We just had a man who drove around and was supposed to be watching our houses, but my mother contended that when we left the house, he would tell the burglars we weren't at home because we had 5 break-ins.
What did you do for amusement as a child?
Well, on Saturday, I got in trouble saying this at Sunday school, but on Saturday, on Shabbat, my sister and I and my cousin, Esther Barzun Stein, would get on the streetcar with our 3 cents, and we'd go downtown, and we'd go to the movies. And we'd sit up in the balcony, and sometimes we took our sandwiches with us, sometimes we didn't. And then Mom and Daddy would leave the factory. They didn't work there, but they went to look things over. And they would meet us, and we'd go back to the movie and see it again. And then we'd go downtown, and we'd what we call window shop, because that's Mama got ideas from closing the windows. And then we'd go eat at a restaurant, and then we'd drive home in the car. And then we used to go swimming a lot. We went to White Rock, we went to Keys Park, we went to Lakewood. In fact, I got a beautiful 3rd-degree burn on my back from being out in the sun for 8 years, but we had a good time. We didn't have a lot of money, but we were happy.
Okay, so you had a lot of entertainment in your neighborhood and different social activities.
Well, we'd all get together and play. In fact, there's one friend of mine that's in my Havara group said to me the other night, Rosalee, when I came to Dallas to visit my grandparents who were the Malowitzes, I know we played together. I said, I know we did.
Okay. You briefly informed me about your education, but tell me about your experiences in school, where activities, interests, grade school, high school. What did you do after high school? College, where, when? What did you study? It seems that you have a very comprehensive education. I congratulate you.
Thank you. Well, I started at Texas taking core subjects, and then my daddy had a heart attack that summer, and I stayed home to help my mother in the business because she couldn't run it by herself, and I was the one that help pack and ship and keep the books and do the bookkeeping and stuff like that. And never had any problems in school. I did have problems in New Braunfels with one teacher and one neighbor who told me they were going to put my mother and daddy in a boxcar and throw them in the river. And I ran home. We had a Bohemian girl working for us, Lottie, and I started crying, and she said, don't pay any attention to him. But it was so funny, though. He would let us play with his daughter, Elsie, but he was very anti-Semitic. In school, there was a teacher, for some reason, who took a dislike to me, and I guess I shouldn't say her name, but it was Kruger, and she was the mother of Bob Kruger, who turned out to be one of the senators or House of Representatives or something, and I met him at a party for Martin Frost, and I said, "Are you related to Alma Kruger?" And he said, "My mother. Let's go call her." And I thought, oh my gosh. Luckily she wasn't home. I was saved.
Where was this?
This was back in Dallas after we came back to Dallas. And in New Braunfels is when she was my second grade teacher.
Okay. Now you went to grade school at Colonial Elementary, right?
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
See. Okay. What grades did you attend there?
I started in the 4th grade, and they were going to put me back because I didn't know long division, and my cousin got me by the hand because I came home crying, and I said, "I don't want to be put back to the 3rd grade." And she sat me down and she said, "Now here," and she taught me long division overnight. So I knew how to do it.
High school, did you go to Forest Avenue?
Oh yeah, I went to Forest Avenue High School. I was an officer in every class, and I graduated in January because back then they had midterm graduations. But I had a great time in high school because I was in every play. I was a singer. I like to sing. In fact, in New Braunfels, I used to entertain the Lions Club singing a cappella. Little scrawny me standing up there singing to all those gentlemen. Mm-hmm. It was fun. I enjoyed it.
Well, my years with the Dallas school system, as I told you earlier, was 36 years. It was Madison High School.
Oh, yes.
But I've been there many times.
It's clean as a pin.
And worked as a school social worker and interpreter for Spanish-speaking students and parents. And I would look at the class rosters from the 40s and saw numerous Jewish surnames.
Sure. Oh, I was secretary to the alumni group for years. And the first time we had our first big reunion, I was standing next to the president, who was Jack Tawalowski, who's since passed away. And who stands there but Henry Miller, Stanley Marcus singing, "We're loyal to you, Forest High," and we were hysterical. Here are these leaders in the community, I mean big shots, singing, "We're loyal to you, Forest High."
Rosalee, at Forest Avenue High School, what percentage was Jewish?
25%.
25%. I see. Were they well received by the other students?
Oh yeah, they were all so smart.
Okay.
They couldn't very well turn, But the only thing I didn't like about high school was the principal was very anti-Semitic.
Really?
He would hold cheerleading tryouts on Yom Kippur, so none of the Jewish kids could try out.
To be a cheerleader.
But other than that, the teachers were wonderful. I just adored it. In fact, I still talk about my teachers from Forest.
It was a good quality school.
Yes, in fact, Miss Kimberly, who was taught us music, picked me to sing in an all-city glee club. And I was so proud. Well, my folks were so proud of me, but I love to entertain, I love to sing.
Okay, after high school, you went to college.
I
believe you mentioned 3 different colleges.
Well,
let's elaborate on that.
I went to Texas, 10 Dallas girls. I was the 11th, got on the train and went to the University of Texas. And most of them pledged Delta Phi Epsilon. We were all sorority sisters. We had a great time. And I had a ball. In fact, I got put on probation a few times because I stayed out too late. But it was fine. I did fairly good there. But then after my dad had his heart attack and I stayed home, a friend of mine fixed me up with a date from Oklahoma at the Texas OU game. And he said, "Why don't you come to OU?" And I thought, that's not such a bad idea. And my daddy was so excited. He would cry when I'd visit him in the hospital that I wasn't in school. And I said, "Daddy, I'm going back to school. Don't worry about it." And at that time, out-of-state tuition was $50. So I went to OU and lived in the dorm, the Scottish Rite dorm, because my daddy was a Shriner. And it was wonderful. I gained 10 pounds, and Daddy says the best $5,000 he ever spent. I put 10 pounds on me. But I had a good time. I had a real good time.
You liked OU?
I liked OU then, yeah.
Okay. What did you study at these colleges?
Oh, well, I started out as an education major, and I took most of the courses, and I was supposed to do practice teaching. And then the young man I was pinned to at OU, this Sammy, flunked out of school. And of course, his family blamed me, but he thought he was smarter than the teachers. So I decided, my daddy said, why don't you come home and finish at SMU? And I said, that's a good idea, and I did. Well, then they came to me and said, you're Jewish? And I said, yes. And they said, the Dallas Independent School District won't hire you unless you're an A student. Well, I wasn't. I was a B student and maybe occasionally a C. So I had to change my major. So right in the middle of everything, I changed my major to, I guess you'd call it sociology, but it was social work. And I worked for city county welfare after I graduated in 3.5 years. I took 21 hours in summer school, and they made me sign a petition, a form that if I had a nervous breakdown, they wouldn't blame the school. My parents wouldn't blame the school. But I did graduate with a case of the shingles. But I got my degree in 3.5 years, even with all the transferring I did.
From the University of Oklahoma?
No, from SMU.
Oh, SMU at this time. Did you like SMU?
Oh, yeah. I was president of the sorority. We had a local. And I was president of the sorority. My sister was there.
Jewish sorority?
Yeah. We had a local sorority, Delta Rho.
Mm-hmm.
We wanted to put a national in, and we wanted AE5, but the dean wouldn't let us. I don't think she liked us too much because we used to win the scholarship cup every year. We had some smart girls. We had board and.
This is interesting because I'm an SMU graduate also. Delta Rho.
They had a Sami chapter.
I knew they had a Sami chapter.
And we had a local Delta Rho. I wrote the song for her.
And do you think SMU was being somewhat anti-Semitic, maybe?
No, I think just that individual dean was. But we never had any difficulty in classes.
No.
I mean, I never did. I just freewheeling, just doing what I wanted to do and studied and got out.
Mm-hmm. So over the years, going to 3 different colleges, you accumulated a lot of credits, I assume.
And I didn't lose any either when I transferred, which was interesting. And they asked me why I wanted to get out from summer school, and I said, oh, I have to go to work. Well, it wasn't true, but that's what I told them. Mm-hmm. So they let me take the 21 hours, but I only took 5 finals. I was excused from 2 others because my grades were high enough that I didn't have to have a final.
You got your master's at SMU?
No, I didn't get my master's. I was going to get a master's in social work, but the only school that taught it was Arlington, and that's when I had already married and had 3 kids, and I told the woman at Presbyterian, where I had applied for a job, that I told her I had a double master's. I had an MA, and she started laughing. She said, oh, you're a mama. I said, yes, and I can't leave my family to go to school because I take care of them and everything else. Thank you.
Well, you really had a great pass in the different colleges you attended.
Yeah, then after I got through with City County, I worked for City County Welfare. They hired me as a typist. And it was interesting because they used a dictaphone. I had never used a dictaphone. So when she said, okay, you're hired, I went down to the dictaphone office and said, teach me. And they did, and the next day I went to work. But after that, the war broke out, and I went to work for Corps of Engineers in the Santa Fe building, and I worked there till the war was over. And then I worked at a lot of other jobs in different synagogues. Worked at Shearith Israel. In fact, I was a secretary to Rabbi Weisfeld, and he's the one who married Cyril and me.
During your childhood, what were your Jewish affiliations?
My sister and I belonged to what we call Young Judea.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess we stayed there until we were teenagers. really don't remember. No, we were teenagers as young Judeas. And then, after I got married and my kids were old enough to go into B'nai B'rith youth organizations, I became an advisor of BBYO. I did that for a few years.
As a child, your family did belong to a synagogue.
We belonged to Shearith Israel, yes. Oh no, well, first when we moved back to Dallas, Daddy didn't affiliate with Shearith. He had belonged to Shearith before he married my mother. But then Temple Emanu-El would let you send your children to Sunday school without being a member or paying dues. So for the first year, my cousin Esther and my sister Babe and I walked from our house on Pennsylvania Avenue over to South Boulevard and went to Sunday school. And Dr. Sellers came through one day and wanted to know who wanted to conduct services after Sunday school. We always had like a chapel service. And I raised my hand, and I didn't even know how to read the transliteration, but I conducted the services. And when I went home and told my dad what I had done, I thought the buttons were going to bust off his clothes, but he was so proud of me.
Well, sure. And this was in a conservative shul,
This
then?
was in Temple Emanu-El.
Oh, Temple Emanu-El, okay.
And at Shearith Israel, I taught there. I was with Mrs. Winterman. I used to help lead the class in singing. And I was confirmed there. I took postgraduate work, and I taught Sunday school there as well as teaching at Temple Emanu-El.
Okay. Did your family celebrate the Jewish holidays
Oh,
regularly?
yes. Oh, yes.
Okay.
My mother had a great big closet that all the dishes went in there, and we had the Milchuk and Fleischig dishes come out for Passover. We were very, I say we kept a kosher home. My daddy's aunt came over from England, and she kept a kosher home in London, so my mother did the whole kitchen over so Aunt Golda could stay with us. And she kept that kosher home until the day she died.
Did your parents belong to Jewish organizations?
Oh yeah, Mama was a member of the Sisterhood of Shearith Israel. Daddy didn't belong to, oh, he was a Brotherhood member, what am I thinking? Yeah, Daddy was a member of Brotherhood of Shearith Israel. He was on the board of directors of Shearith Israel. He was active in the Masonic Enshrine. He did that. In fact, he gave my husband a wedding gift to become a Mason.
Okay, so your family had interactions with the Jewish community on a continual basis.
Mom and Daddy went to, in fact, we would go to services on Friday night, and my sister and I would fall asleep on the pews, and Daddy would carry us out, but we went. And we were very much Jewish, and Hanukkah was a big holiday for us. And we had a neighbor in New Braunfels who was German, and she used to let us go in and throw the cranberries on the tree because my daddy explained to us that Christmas was not our holiday, therefore we did not celebrate it. But we knew we were Jewish, and we were proud of it.
How did you or your family interact with the Gentile community? Did you have Gentile friends?
Oh yeah, we had, well, Daddy had a factory which was made up of black people and of course they were Gentile community. And we did fine. I mean, we used to give Christmas presents to, we'd pick a school or maybe Scottish Rite or something and make a money donation and give them a list of who we wanted to send to. But my daddy was very well known on Comer Street. Everybody knew J. Cohen. He helped a lot of people start businesses.
And what was the name of his company again?
Cohen Garment Company.
On which street?
Commerce.
Commerce, okay.
Wholesale Merchants Building. I teased him once. I said, Daddy, you've been in here 20 years. You could have bought the building. I said, do you think Leo Corrigan used his own money? I said, he put the building up as collateral and then got the money to buy it. He said, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that.
Okay.
He was happy.
Your working career or adult activities. Now, what did you do after college or high school? What kind of work did you do?
Well, I worked for city county welfare. Then I worked for the government, for Corps of Engineers. Then my uncle had a heart attack. My sister and I flew to Mexico City to be with my aunt. She had no children. And my daddy insisted that we go down and stay with my aunt. It was his brother who had the heart attack. And my sister was a medical technician. She went back to work, but I had been working at a good asylum as a receptionist and taking care of the money and stuff, and they let me go, so I got a job working for Shearith Israel for the rabbi. I was his secretary. And I worked there until I got married. And then after I got married, I worked for not Allied Fire, it was Maltex, which was my uncle, Cyril's uncle, Will Saffer, and Mr. Malowitz. And Cyril had an interest in the business, so I would go in and help with the book work.
Okay.
And then I worked for different people around. You know, once you learn how to write up a contract, you can write up any kind of contract. And I was pretty versatile. When I worked for the government, they used to send me out to different places because I could adapt so easily.
Mm-hmm.
They said I was smart, so I said thank you.
Well, you were extremely versatile.
Very versatile.
You could do many things. You were involved in civic organizations.
And loved to cook.
Oh, really?
Yes, when I was a member of Sisterhood, they came up to me at Temple and they said, would you like to do one of the luncheons? And I said, sure. And it turned out to be the donor for 400 people, and I was in charge of the food. And who do you think the guest speaker was? Robert Strauss. And I was so excited, I ran in from the kitchen we had a reception before the luncheon. And I said, I want to shake your hand because there was a rumor that he was going to run for president. And I want to say that I cooked for the president. He said, oh no. But I did that I was president of Sisterhood for 3 years. And I would conduct a meeting and run in the kitchen and make sure everything was okay.
What did Robert Strauss do? I know the Strauss name.
He was ambassador to Russia at one time.
Oh, really? Wow.
He's a lawyer.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I ran around with his kid brother.
And of course you were active in Jewish organizations as well.
Right.
Which one was your favorite organization?
I think Sisterhood.
Sisterhood.
They do the most.
Okay.
Oh, I belong to Hadassah, and I belong to, what do they call it? I think it was ORT. I was on 4 different boards. I was on a lot of committees at Temple. I was on the music committee,
Mm-hmm.
still am, the holiday committee, all kinds of committees, Sunday school committee. It got so that I was so inundated with meetings that I quit everything and just stopped because I was burning myself out. And then I went to work for my husband for 4 years, and I quit and he fired me simultaneously.
Okay.
They'd call and ask for the boss, and I'd say, he isn't here. No, we mean you. And I said, uh-oh, that ain't going to work.
How did you meet your husband? Did you tell me?
I met my husband at his stepsister's house when we were 12 years old. And he used to come over on his bicycle. He lived with his grandmother on Forest Avenue. And he used to come over on his bicycle and pump me to the Forest Theater or the White Theater. And he'd say, have you got your dime? I said, I got my dime. And one day I even remember the clothes I wore because my folks made all our clothes. And I said, the maid took us to the movies in our car. And when we got back home and he got on his bike and went home, I said to her, Rose Parker, she was a hoot, I said, that's the boy I'm going to marry. And 13 years later, I did.
In what year were you married?
Married in 1942.
In Dallas?
In Dallas. Waited for him to come home from service, and he came home to me.
Let's see, Temple Emanu-El?
No, we got married at the Melrose because I didn't want to get married at Shearith. We belonged to Shearith then because they didn't have a middle aisle, and I wanted to walk down the middle aisle, so we got married at the Melrose Hotel.
The one on Oak Lawn in Cedar Springs?
Had a big dinner afterwards and went to New Orleans on our honeymoon. And of course, that was his old stomping ground because he had gone to Gulfport Military Academy, and after that he went to LSU. Tried to get me to go to LSU. I said, I'm staying at Texas. Or then I was at SMU by then.
After you got married, where did you and your husband live? In what part of Dallas?
We had an apartment on University Boulevard that was being rented by a friend of ours, and she convinced the landlady it was an efficiency. In fact, it had a Murphy bed, and the first time I pulled the Murphy bed down, I went back up with it. So Cyril bought I weighed 86 pounds when I got married. I was a little of nothing. He said he made a woman out of me. I said, you tried too hard. When I got to 120, I said, that's it. But we lived on University Boulevard, and then Cyril got a GI loan, and we built our first house on Caruth, which is gorgeous, still there. We lived there 12 years. We had 3 children, and the house got too small. We only had 2 bedrooms. So then we built another house on Baxtershire, which was twice as big as the one on Caruth. And then when our kids all went off to college, we decided we'd downsize. And we did, and we built our third house, which I'm in now, on Whitman Lane, right off of Willow.
Okay. Now, Caruth University Boulevard, that was Park Cities, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. And how were the neighbors there?
Well, the Caruth was Dallas. Oh, the neighbors were great. Across the street was a Jewish family, and we were friendly with everybody. Everybody was friends.
Okay. And I'm certain that you have main contact with the Jewish community all of these years.
Of course.
I know.
I work in a gift shop every Tuesday. I'm going to start helping bake cookies on Thursdays. I just did a boot scooting barbecue deal we had. I got in on that. I do a lot of stuff. I have to stay busy.
How many children did you have?
I have 3 children. Our first child, unfortunately, passed away, but I have a boy who's a doctor in Houston. He's a maxillofacial surgeon. And I have a daughter in Arkansas who raises greyhounds and has a pet salon where she grooms dogs. And they raise the greyhounds to race. And then I have a daughter who teaches at the Jewish Community Center here. She taught at Temple Preschool for 20 years. And then she went to Kansas City with her special friend. And they came back to Dallas, and now she's working at the JCC in pre-K.
Okay. How many grandchildren do you have?
Counting the ones who are married, I have 12 grandchildren.
Congratulations.
And I have 3 great-grandchildren.
Wonderful.
And I think they are adorable.
Let's talk about them for a minute.
Well, last night my granddaughter came over because, unfortunately, my phone was off the hook and they couldn't get me, and she got worried, so she drove over to see if I was okay. And she had sent me a video of Madeline, who is going to be 2 in July. I miss you, Mimi. Love you, Mimi. And then that's my son's daughter. And then my daughter in Arkansas has 2 sons. One lives in Corinth. He has 2 children. Chloe and Clayton are 7 and 5, and they're adorable. And David is married to a young woman who's doing her internship in Denver. Michael is in Chicago. He's working for some mortgage company. He's a brilliant computer guy. And Laura married a young man, an orthopedic surgeon. They're going to go to North Carolina in a couple of months for her fellowship. And that's about it. Everybody in my family, I'm bragging. Jason's wife, Jason has a master's in behavior analysis. and his wife got a full scholarship at the University of Oregon, and she has her PhD in behavior analysis, and they just got a job. We're so excited. They're leaving Oregon, thank goodness, and they're going to be at Texas Tech in Lubbock. And then my son's son has a full scholarship to Harvard. That's Michael Cohen, and he's in neuroscience, but has something to do with the brain and the eye. I don't know. He's in his ivory tower, and he's brilliant.
How old is he?
He's 26.
And he's going to go to Harvard.
He's in Harvard.
Oh,
He's
he's
on his
now,
second
now.
year now.
Wow. That's great.
Yeah.
I bet you're very proud of him.
Oh, yeah. They're great kids. Everybody in the family has a degree except my Cindy, and she really didn't care anything about school. She just wanted to get married and have kids. So she has two great boys who call me all the time. I mean, they lived with me for 2 years while she gallivanted around.
Okay, we've talked about your connections here in Dallas, and also Dallas during your childhood. And when you moved there, we discussed that. I'm sure Dallas was very different during your childhood as compared to today.
Oh,
Right?
yes. Well, we used to ride the streetcar for one thing. I haven't ridden a streetcar in, God, I don't know how many years. My mother used to ride the streetcar to the factory downtown, and then we would pick them up. My sister and I took the car to SMU. Daddy would ride the streetcar to the factory, and then we'd drive from SMU. We picked them up at the Wholesale Merchants Building. We'd come home.
How has the city changed significantly as compared to your childhood?
Oh, it's a whole new ball game. I mean,
Completely new.
Completely new. In fact, I remember going downtown one day looking for Sangers, and it was no longer Sangers, it was Health Centro.
Right, that's where I taught.
And I thought, I don't go anywhere past LBJ, because I, to be honest with you, born in Dallas, but I am the worst one in sense of direction. My husband put a compass in the car so I wouldn't get lost. But it's grown, it's big, it's vibrant. It's just so different than it was back in those days.
Back in those days, the community then, would you say it was more cohesive than it is today? Or am I wrong?
Well, I always felt we were sort of segregated, because South Dallas was South Dallas, and North Dallas was North Dallas, and East Dallas was East Dallas, and West Dallas you didn't go to because it was too dangerous. But as we have smarter leaders now, and we're trying to get everything put together. I mean, they're working very hard on South Dallas to bring some financial help there. I think we've got good leaders, and if they keep doing it, it'll be fine.
So the community back in those days was more like a close Jewish community.
True, because the boys would come over. I lived on Park Row, and South Boulevard was where the Temple was. And the boys from Temple would come over to get me, to take me to their sock hops on Sunday, because we used to laugh and say if a girl from Temple married a boy from Shearith Israel or Tifereth, that was mixing oil and water, because we were so completely different. I mean, Temple Emanu-El, they had their Passover, and then after dinner, they'd have chicken for dinner, and then they'd have ice cream for dessert, and it just used to drive my mother crazy. And they'd walk outside and smoke a cigarette on Friday night, and she didn't like it at all. But when my son got bar mitzvahed at Temple Emanu-El, I said to my daddy, okay, Daddy, say your prayer. You think you're walking into a church. But he was so impressed with Rabbi Olin, who wasn't, that he sort of changed his tune. And now, today, our temple is leaning toward conservatism. Yarmulkes, taluses. We sell more taluses in our gift shop, I think, than any of the other. I'm just guessing. we sell many, many taluses. There's not a child that's getting bar or bat mitzvah that doesn't come in the shop and look for a talus. When I taught Sunday school at Temple, a woman called me one day and asked me if her son could wear a talus to his bar mitzvah, and they told me to tell her no.
And what year was this, more or less?
Sometimes in the 60s.
So it was different then.
And I remember when we did Hanukkah, they said, don't stress the Star of David, not unless they ask for it. And I went outside and I was crying, and my husband said, what's wrong? And I told him, he said, I don't want you to teach here anymore. So I finished up my year, but I didn't go back. But I had taught for 2 or 3 years there, and taught 2 or 3 years at Shearith Israel.
Okay, this was at
But that was
Hanukkah,
before. Well, see, when we had the 6-Day War in Israel, that's when Rabbi Olin did a complete turnabout.
Okay.
Before, Zionism was a dirty word.
A dirty word?
Oh yeah, you didn't talk about Zionism. But
Did they wear yarmulkes to service?
no, they wouldn't allow it. In fact, when my husband when Shelley Zimmerman came to Dallas and he wore yarmulkes, my husband said, I'm going to start wearing my tallis and yarmulke. I said, no, you're not. And he said, why not? I said, you're being a hypocrite. I said, you didn't wear it all the time. He wasn't here just because he's wearing one. David wears one. All the rabbis wear them now, even the women rabbis. It's completely changed.
Complete change.
I like it because they chant where before they didn't, it just said it.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a very dear friend who just cringed when she heard the chanting. And I'd sit there like a Cheshire cat smiling my head off, because that's the way I was taught to chant.
Mm-hmm. So here's the question that I think you have just already answered. What was the Dallas Jewish community like then? You just explained.
It was different.
Very different.
They'd take me over to dance on Sundays, and I was considered an excellent dancer, and we'd win all kind of prizes.
Mm-hmm.
But it was like going into Temple was like going into like going into a church.
Did they have music?
Organ. But we have an organ. We have an organ at Temple.
Mm-hmm.
And a beautiful choir. We have an international choir.
Mm-hmm.
Shearith had 4 people who sang in their choir. It was lovely, and Rabbi and Cantor Kaplan, who was a very dear friend of ours, had a choir during the holidays of young men. They have a nice choir now, too.
So the city of Dallas has changed dramatically.
Oh, yes, I think so.
You've seen a lot of changes here.
I sure have. I get lost so easily.
Okay, I'm going to go into some concluding questions, Rosalee.
Okay.
Who are your role models in life? I'm sure you have particular people that impressed you that you would consider as a role model. And what are you most proud of with these role models?
I think, well, my mother didn't have a role model. Her mother died at the age of 39 after having 7 girls. And Mama was 14 when she came to this country. And I always said she did the best she could. So I really think my main role models in those days were my teachers, particularly in grade school. I was very, very fond of them, and they were fond of us, being my sister. We were known as the Cohen girls, and we'd go on a Girl Scout camping, and we'd want to wash the dishes because we never washed dishes at home. We always had a maid, even though we didn't have a lot of money, but that's one thing we had was a maid. She lived in our servants' quarters. But I think my teachers really were my biggest role models, and then I adored my father because he came here with nothing, and he wasn't rich, but back in those days he was rich. I mean, he wouldn't be considered rich today, but he was well fixed.
Mm-hmm.
And he was the type of person who said to me and my husband, he'd never give us advice unless we asked for it. He didn't want to interfere. and he never did, but he was amazed at what my husband did as coming back out of service and starting a business and being successful, thank goodness.
So your mother was probably your main role model in life.
I admired my mother because of where she came from and what she did. I mean, she was very talented. In fact, all her sisters, it was interesting, we called them the Thomas girls. Their name was Tomaszewski, and they changed it to Thomas. But they were all excelled in something. And they were all in the garment business.
How interesting.
It was interesting. And she was the major domo. We used to tease her because she'd come into the kitchen. My sister and I would be washing the dishes after Passover, and we'd get down to maybe the pots, and Mama would say, "Okay, girls, you can go home now, I'll finish." And we'd laugh, say, "Yeah, Mama, we've done everything, you can finish." But we admired her. We used to tease her unmercifully. Oh, we used to tease her, and she used to chase us around the dining room table. But we had great respect for her, and my father too. My daddy once said to me, "Whatever you do, always leave a good name." That was the most important thing.
That's very good advice. Very good advice.
I remembered that.
Rosalee, is there anything you would want to add to this interview that we haven't discussed?
Not
Something
particularly, no. I appreciate you doing this. Where is it going to be?
I'll tell you. Well, I want to let you know that I feel extremely honored to have had the opportunity
Well, thank you, sir.
to
I
do your
appreciate that.
interview. You are really a very, very unique individual. And you're a walking history book of Dallas and the Dallas Jewish Historical Society. This will be a tremendous asset to our collection of oral histories. And again, thanks for letting me do your interview.
You're quite welcome.